the shocking on a livings of expectant mother, Laci Peterson, and her unborn son, Connor, as well as the conviction of her husband, Scott Peterson, for the unthinkable crime, had the world riveted in the early two. Now, 20 years later, new developments in legal proceedings have thrust the notorious double on a livings back into the headlines. December 24, 2003, Laci Peterson vanishes. Laci, who was 8 months pregnant, was reported missing by her husband and stepfather on Christmas Eve 2002. Initiating a massive search for the mother-to-be, Scott claimed that he'd gone to the Berkeley Marina, almost 90 miles away, to go fishing that morning, and that he'd last seen Laci before he left their Modesto, California home. Her mother reported she'd spoken with her the evening before. January 24, 2003, Scott Peterson's affair goes public. Missing persons case was rocked by the revelation of Scott's affair. Massage therapist Amber Frey told reporters she began dating Scott, who she believed was single, 2 months earlier. She reached out to police on December 30th after connecting the dots between Scott and Laci, whose disappearance was all over the news. March 5, 2003, Laci Peterson's case changed. Tijuana Living's Casa Modesto police reclassified the disappearance of Laci from a missing persons case, Tijuana Living's case. April 13 and 14, 2003, Laci and Connor Peterson's remains found in San Francisco Bay. The remains of a fetus, later identified as Connor Peterson, were found in San Francisco Bay a day later. The remains of a woman, later identified as Laci Peterson, were found after they had washed ashore about a mile away from where Connor's remains were discovered. The evidence turned up just a few miles from where Scott Peterson had gone fishing. April 18, 2003, Scott Peterson arrested. Remains identified same day the remains were positively identified as Laci and her unborn son. Scott was arrested in La Jolla, California. He had bleached blonde hair and about $15,000 in his car, with investigators believing he was fleeing to Mexico at this time. April 21, 2003, Scott Peterson pleads not guilty charged with 2 counts of capital murder. Scott pleaded not guilty. He was appointed a public defender. Less than 2 weeks later, celebrity lawyer Mark Dragos joined Scott's defense team. December 19, 2003, Laci's mother files wrongful death claims. Laci's mom, Sharon Roca, filed a suit seeking $5 million in damages. The family wants to be sure that Scott suffers the greatest of civil and criminal penalties. January 20, 2004, Scott Peterson's trial venue changed in the interest of a fair trial. The judge announced that proceedings would be transferred 90 miles from Scott's hometown to San Mateo County. June 1, 2004, Scott Peterson's trial begins. Case depended on circumstantial evidence, with no crime scene or a living weapon. The prosecution posited that Scott wanted a life free of responsibility, without a child. June 23, 2004, juror removed from the panel in Scott Peterson trial 12 days after he was seen speaking with Laci's brother. A member of the jury was dismissed by the judge. August 10, 2004, Amber Frey takes the stand. Frey testified that Scott claimed he was a widower. Jurors heard recordings of Scott and Frey's conversations made after she agreed to cooperate with police when she discovered the truth about Scott's marriage. November 3, 2004, jury deliberation begins in Scott Peterson case. After 5 months of testimony, the jury was left to determine if Scott unalived his pregnant wife and dumped her body in San Francisco Bay, or was merely a straying husband who was framed. During deliberations, 2 jurors were dismissed for misconduct. November 12, 2004, jury reaches verdict in Scott Peterson trial. Peterson was found guilty of first-degree unaliving for Laci's death and second-degree unaliving for Connor's death. December 13, 2004, the jury recommends a death sentence for Scott Peterson. 6-man, 6-woman jury unanimously voted for the death penalty. March 16, 2005, the judge sentences Scott Peterson to death. The judge sentenced Scott to death. Scott was sent to San Quentin State Prison. April 2009, Laci Peterson's family drops civil suit. Laci's parents dropped their wrongful death lawsuit against Scott. July 15, 2012, and November 24, 2015, appeals filed in Scott Peterson case. Scott's attorneys filed an appeal of his conviction, arguing that he didn't have a fair trial. Some points involved jury selection and impartiality. August 24, 2020, death sentence tossed out for Scott Peterson. California Supreme Court overturned Scott's death penalty sentence. The court upheld his conviction, according to USA Today. October 14, 2020, Scott Peterson's conviction review. The California Supreme Court ordered a review of Scott's conviction and sent the case back to San Mateo County Superior Court to re-examine and determine if it should be overturned. December 8, 2021, life sentence again for Scott Peterson. Scott was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 10 months later, he was moved from death row at San Quentin State Prison near San Francisco to Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California. December 20, 2022, Scott Peterson's request for new trial denied. Judge denied Scott's request for a new trial that focused on jury selection issues. January 2024, Innocence Project gets involved in Scott Peterson case. The Los Angeles Innocence Project says it has begun representing Scott Peterson. The nonprofit known for working to free wrongfully convicted inmates says it is investigating Scott Peterson's claim of actual innocence. Since then, lawyers for the Los Angeles Innocence Project asked a judge to consider retesting evidence that could change the course of the case. They have asked to test a bloody mattress found in a burned van in the Modesto, California area the morning after she disappeared. A strip of duct tape stuck to Laci's pants is another piece of evidence that's been asked to be retested. What do you think of this case and the Innocence Project getting involved? Thank you for watching. For more true crime stories, follow my co-host Child Case podcast with Sylvia Pradia, where she covers child abuse cases.